This is Epic Challenge, where we discuss, debate, and dedicate 20 minutes each week to a hot topic in the world of Warhammer. If you give a damn about tabletop gaming, then this is the show for you. Now, here are your hosts, Kicker and Nicky Dee.
Welcome to this week's Epic Challenge, the show that challenges your ideas on Warhammer so we can discover the Imperial truth, the heresy of chaos, and the obscurity of the Xenos. Kicker, welcome to we came back for episode 2. How about that?
Yes, it's good to be back for episode 2, Nick. And we received a lot of messages from the community after episode 1. It was really kind of exciting and rewarding and encouraging to see all the comments on YouTube. A lot of the stuff was basically just, we love the show, but there was a few fun call outs. Benjamin mentioned that he was a huge fan of the Churchill quote that was dropped last episode. And he really liked our guest. Of course, it was Adam Camilleri. You got to love Adam.
A great one.
Linda had a great idea. She's like, why don't we bring on Joe from War Games Live? Because he's really impacting the growth of the tournament scene because of his coverage. So she's like, maybe that's a good episode. So maybe we'll have to get Joe on here. Nick, how you doing?
Yeah, it's been a good week for us, Kicker. And a quick heads up to before we get into this week's episode, because we've got an amazing guest for this one. I know you're really excited for this poll, Kicker, but business, right? Business in the front, party in the back. We're the mullet of Warhammer talk shows. This last week's show was on YouTube only. We are now on Spotify, and we are soon to be on Apple Podcasts. So we have you covered. If you have any other preferred podcast medium, why? Those are like the Holy Trinity, right? Adam talked the last week's show, the Holy Trinity of dwarfs, orcs, and elves for fantasy. I feel like for podcasts, if you've got YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, you got what you need. But let us know if you need something else. But Kicker, that's our business. Let's get into the fun for this week, and let's introduce our guest.
Yes, guys, I am psyched for our guest today, not just because he plays one of my factions or that he's basically a champion of that faction. He also is a hardcore competitive gamer and one of the coolest content creators out there. Plus, he has a very impressive beard. Let's welcome in Kyle Grundy.
Where's Kyle?
Kyle up. Hey, Kyle.
How are you doing, guys? This is a pleasure to be on.
I gotta say, and Kyle, I had seen pictures of you before, obviously, because I see the Pure Tide gaming in my YouTube algorithm. But until we were on a video call, I don't think I respected the beard enough. Like mine's a little bit thinner than it usually is, but it's looking quite fantastic there. I didn't think that was necessarily a part of the Tau, but maybe that's something you're trying to bring into the greater good yourself. Is that what it is?
I don't think the Tau have facial hair.
No, I don't think they do. But I think for me, once it started going on the head, just woke up one morning, I just had a beard. That's how it tends to be. So I'm making up for it somewhere on my face. It's just upside down. But yeah, thanks very much for the beard comments and the lovely introduction.
Well, Kyle, real fast, just so that people know where they can find you. What's your claim to fame? Just give a little bit, about yourself.
So you can find me on YouTube is predominantly the main content that you can find the stuff that I do. I do have a massive Discord. I am somewhat a professional Warhammer player as I do it for a living. How the hell did that happen? But it's happened.
You do it for a living. It's a job. It's professional, man. You are professional.
If you'd have asked me 5 years ago would I have been doing this as a professional, I'd have probably laughed and gone, pfft. But apparently here we are. So yeah, I've been around and I've started playing Warhammer like when I was 13. Picked up like fantasy and then moved into 40k accidentally and then chose Tau. So I've been playing Tau for 25 years. So I kind of, know what I'm on about. Question mark.
Yeah.
Claim to fame, Tau guy, it's just you play Tau all the time. But I've won the top tower in the world multiple years. And this year has been a fantastic season for me because not only have I won top Tau, I actually was in contention for winning the entire ITC, which was a massive shock. So I'm always looking for ways of improving just my generalship and my, ability at the game. And I think this year has been absolutely amazing. So I didn't do it, but I came in the top. I think I finished 6th, which is a massive improvement from previous years. So, and doing it with one faction and only being that faction for in my entire career is a feat that I am very, very, very proud of.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, as is tradition to keep us all accountable, we need to quickly check in and report how we've been enjoying Warhammer this week, whether it's hobby progress. I actually got to play in a team tournament this weekend. I ran Hammer the Emperor, that tank division detachment, right, for guard. Got my ass totally handed to me. I have learned a very valuable lesson. You don't go to a tournament without practicing that particular detachment at least a few times. I showed up. The first time I ever ran that brand new detachment was on Saturday, and it showed that I did not know what the hell I was doing. I had fun. fun. I got to play with James, Nat, and Will, some of the lightly salted crew here in Utah, and it was a total blast, despite losing terribly. What about you, Nick?
Mine was pretty simple and quick. It was actually book reading. So it's the make sure I hold it the right way. The Dark Coil Damnation by Peter. We're just gonna say by Peter F. You can look it up. I read so it's an anthology, but then has some longer stories. But Kyle, actually, the first story that's in that anthology is actually about a Tau cast. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, it's kind of about it's basically about corruption and or things in the Warhammer universe. So, for example, the first part that I read it was Tau unknowingly coming upon a gene stealer cult infestation. So it was pretty cool stuff. But Kyle, how about for you? What have you been up to in the hobby recently?
So after LVO, I just took a month out because turns out the entire ITC season took it out of me. Shock horror. And then, I thought I need to get back to events. So I've just come back from the UKTC Super Major, which is a 330 player event, a really big one. And we actually had quite a lot of people come over from overseas.
Manchester, right?
Manchester, yeah. So Scary came over, which was like a delight. And I think the guy from Red Dragon from the crew was over as well. So it was really nice to have faces. So yeah, it was a really good event. And I'm now back into the grind, if you will. So that for me. And then I think this month I've got another event near the end of the month, but I'm just going to be taking a bit of downtime just to refocus and recalibrate.
Yep, sounds good there, Kyle. Well, yeah, best of luck on. I know we found out recently the IT season kind of got changed a little bit on the schedule and things like that. So we're, I guess, now 2 or 3 months into it, but it's a long season. We got through November, so you're going to be able to get back up to your number 6 spot or even higher. I think that's throughout the course of the year. Long runway. All right. Well, with that, we've covered our hobby progress. Let's get into what we're actually covering for this episode. And because we're still a new show, we're only on episode 2, we're going to give you the overview. So we are now welcoming you to Epic Challenge, where we discuss these hottest topics. And what we're going to be doing, we've got a guest of honor today, that being Kyle, obviously. Our guest is going to provide their informed, educated, or maybe just passionate opinion about Warhammer and help us understand their point of view and their experiences. One of our hosts will be challenging them, or even Epic challenging them, so that to this thought process, and we're going to be able to determine the winner and whether or not this Warhammer consideration is in fact an Imperial truth or something else. Now, with that, Kicker, you're going to be taking the role of host this week. Kyle and I are going to square off. And Kicker, if I were an Imperial Commissar, this is where I would now give you the order: move, move, move. Let's get rolling.
Let's do it. Okay, guys, our topic of discussion tonight is: what can you learn from a mono faction expert? First question right now, Kyle, you're going to have to answer this one straight up. Why should someone be a mono faction player? Like, why play one faction when you can play many?
Well, I think just generally the short answer is that we all have the things that we enjoy doing in our life, and we also try to perfect a particular craft. So just having one craft and perfecting it is easier than trying to master many. So mono faction experts, they have chosen the faction with its passion, whether it's something that appeals to their tactical nature or the way that they like to play the game. And if you focus on that faction, you are going to become an expert at it. So if you want to persist and perform, then be a mono faction expert. And also with the current game, it's viable to do so.
Cool. Nick, I mean, I know you have a different stance here based off the number of armies I see you play every single month. Nick, where do you stand?
Yeah, and it's, to me, this is a really interesting topic and conversation. I love that we have Kyle on for this, someone who has been known, Kyle, as you said, for being a Tau. And you're not the only one. There are lots of people, but there are people, and I feel like I'm on this pathway myself, where I play at least 3 armies throughout the course of the year. I'm not nearly as bad or good in that regard as some others are in the hobby. And for me, it really just becomes, well, why do I play multiple armies? I want to have different play styles. And I want to be able to do different things because, for example, when I'm playing, my Blood Angels, it's an army that's going to go hard, go fast. It's going to go and punch things. But when I want to go and play Death Guard, that's much more of a controlled chaos type of army. I will say, though, Kyle, and I think we may get into this more with the episode, but I mean, you're playing Tau. There's a lot of different ways. I feel like, at least now being a mono faction expert, it's not nearly as limiting as it used to be in prior editions to the game. So that is something where I think from when I came into the game versus and how I've progressed versus now, if I was coming in now and you've been playing Tau for a long time, do you still feel restrained like by playing as a mono faction, or does the new detachment system allow you to do more things and try out all these new flavors?
I think it offers a way more kind of like able to express yourself more within your detachments and skill. But I think one thing for me is that We all do it. And we skim read over the important stuff, aka the rules, right? And we get straight into the exciting stuff, which is army. And when Tau were, in the bad spot in previous editions, it forced me to focus on the fundamental rules, therefore improving myself as a general, wide, rather than just my faction. So in order to perform with a mono faction that wasn't doing too well, I was focusing on the core rule mechanics to be able to do tactics and plays that people didn't predict, because I'm focusing on the rules, the boring part, because I'd already mastered the craft with Tau. So it kind of forced me to look at some of the stuff that we usually skim read over, which I think is always going to improve you as a general.
Wrapping up this question, I think we've got a point, faction agnostic here. So regardless if it's Tau or Khorne, right, world leaders, I think you hit on a point that you've said a few times now, Kyle, which is performance. By focusing on one faction, you've been able to perform, right, and hone that skill. And I guess the results speak for themselves. Look at you, man. Whether the faction is hot or not, you're successfully doing good at event after event after event, and that speaks a lot right there. So yeah, by being that expert in that field, regardless of what the world around you is like or how good that faction is at that time, you're still doing good. So that's really impressive. Let's go to question 2 real fast. Does playing a mono faction mean you only learn how to master certain phases of the game that you play in? Does that mean or does it mean you need to know all the phases better because of how they impact you? I mean, listen, we all know Tau is a shooting army. Is that all you know how to do?
No. I know the charge phase and the fight phase and the piling and consolidation better than combat players sometimes.
Whoa. Okay. All right. Explain.
All right. So the key thing is it's like a SWOT analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So the threats for Tau is that, I don't want to be touched in combat, or there's going to be some pressure, and therefore, yes, you can shoot, you can do your target allocation, you're great at that, but you need to focus on the weaknesses of your own, and you need to uncover the strengths of armies going against you. So with playing a mono faction, I'm going into games going, right, documented against how to play world eaters and stuff. I almost have like a list of things in my head that I know what to do versus certain matchups. And that's because I've persistently played Tau. And then when it comes to understanding, you got to get in the mind of, let's say, an orc, right? They want to charge stuff, they want to wire at me. Cool. Well, I'm going to understand that phase so that when it comes my way, I'm prepared for it. So you're preparing to overcome the weaknesses of your army by understanding phases that your army does not interact with usually. So when you start to interact in the charge phase and the opponent's like, why are you charging me? It's that because I'm gaining extra movement, positioning, and influencing the scoreboard. The scoreboard is what wins you or lose you games, not the damage, not your army, not your detachment. It's your ability to score points and pressure, tempo, and control. So that's why I focus on other areas like combat and things like that.
All right, Nicky Dee, you are a known Blood Angels fanatic, as well as other armies, of course. What's your stance?
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with Kyle on this one, and actually I'm going to speak, but I'm going to come at it from a different point of view. So audience, I'm speaking to you as it goes to this part. I agree. Mono faction experts are at least at the top level of play, right? At the top level of play, Kyle, as you said it, you need to know melee, you need to know fight phase shenanigans better than your opponent does, because your army largely does not play in it, but you need to take into account what your opponent can do. So I think there is a general feeling, or there could be a general approach in our game and in our community where people face a challenge, right? They're a rock and they face paper. Well, there could often be an instance where, rather than actually learning how to play around it, or learning, even if I don't do that well, rather than mitigating it, I'm just going to switch to a different army that does things that well, or doesn't have that same weakness. I can tell you, I mean, between the two of the primary armies that I play are Blood Angels and Death Guard. There's not a whole lot they have in common, but a big part for me switching from Death Guard currently, where we are in 10th edition, to Blood Angels is, hey, I want to be able to play a game that I can go and stage, mid board, and then, jump from the ruins to get to the spots, because Death Guard vehicle heavy list, you can't really stage behind ruins, because then you have to move out from behind them, so you're limited, right? Whereas Blood Angels allows me to do that. But that's a part there I really do applaud mono faction players, and players that are experts like Kyle, because I've had that same experience myself, at least at the high end of play, where those players generally know their rules better inside and out. They know their rules. They generally are going to know the core rules of the game, and they've had those experiences where they've felt the bad touch once or twice, and it only takes touching the hot stove once or twice to say, no, I don't want to do that again, and I need to learn it.
Cool.
In addition to that, just to add as well, I'm very stubborn. So when it comes to switching factions, like you said, like, oh, well, I need this, so I'm going to go and switch this army, I'm too stubborn to want to take an easy option out. I'm like, I know I can solve this with what I've got. So rather than swapping to a different army that clearly does combat like Blood Angels or Orcs, I'm like, no, I'm gonna try and find the solution here, even though it might be my downfall. I'm stubborn and I want to stick to it. So it's that kind of like passion, stubbornness that's factored into probably monofaction experts, because they're like, no, I need to make it work.
Kyle, with that, go ahead, Kicker.
Well, stubbornness a lot of times has negative connotation, but I think that can be a real asset a lot of times. We can call it stubbornness, you can call it commitment. It doesn't make a difference. At the end of the day, it's meaning you're dedicated to your cause. So, I applaud your stubbornness.
And Kyle, my question was, is it kind of just an intuition or a feeling where, hey, you had this one experience? Does that mean you're immediately changing your list, or is it, oh no, I need to face it again? You need to get a couple reps to see, hey, can I actually deal with this? What is that experience like?
So for me, I'm actually quite blessed with Tau, because Tau is by definition in this 10th edition, they're actually balanced, like a fairly balanced codex from release.
Yeah.
So when I look at like the experience of my list, I do get the reps in, but I also am very good at analyzing traits in the meta dashboard and the what you call it, like the waves of like change or whatever, however you want to spin it. So I immediately analyze the meta and then look at what I need to bring within my toolbox to be able to tackle certain threats that are coming. So that comes with years of experience and knowing that, by the way, stat check lists aren't a new thing. They've always happened in every edition. So you just got to spot the patterns. And that's what I do with my list. So reps, yes, but also adapting to change.
Cool. Let's go to the next question. When playing a mono faction, how do you build lists and strategize? Do you have to lean more into your faction and detachment strengths, or are do you have to more closely consider the meta and what top players will be mustering against you so you can adapt accordingly? What do you think, Kyle?
So yes, the game has changed massively since the Dark Ages, where it was just like bring damage, bring unkillable stuff, or bring guns to kill God, or bring God to not die. Now it's about emphasis on the missions themselves, the points and stuff like that. So when I build lists, I actually factor in the damage dealing and the optimal picks last. I look at it in terms of, okay, so how am I going to be projecting points when it comes to primary denial and primary? I always build that part of my list first. And then I look at how aggressive the meta is in terms of how they're wanting to get up in my face. And I will take extra things like more MSU, more units to be able to screen and block and stop them from interacting in the game. Inevitably, if I can stop my opponents from playing the game, I win, right? So it's very simple foundation. When I build list, I have to factor those in first. And unfortunately with Tau, it's a bit of a complex one. You have to factor in guiding units and so on and so forth. So we have to jump through hoops. So there's like two parts there: mission, guiding, and then damage dealing. And then that comes with what you said, Kicker, about analyzing the meta. That's where I analyze the meta. What guns am I bringing? What tools am I bringing to deal with the threat in front of me?
Cool. What about you, Nick?
I generally, whether it's I'm playing Death Guard or even with my Blood Angels, I generally bring a tactical list. And by that, I mean, it's something that can play a little bit in all phases. Yes, Blood Angels are going to be more punchy, but I'm putting a little bit of shooting in there, because you have to be able to portray a little bit of a threat. More or less a take all comers, I think. When I face mono faction experts or people that are doing an army that typically plays has limited phase activations, right? So of course everybody's playing in the movement phase, everybody's going to be doing something at the end of the turn. But when I'm playing against armies that are either only shooting or only fighting, I'm never upset when I see people that dilute their list down to be able to kind of handle all of the things, right? So Kyle, if you're Tau, I mean, maybe unless you're running Kroot, the Kroot hunting pack or something else like that. Yeah. Unless you're running that, like non-shooting guns in there, I love to see that. Because that's something where my army's gonna be able to play a little bit better into that. Same thing if I'm facing off against, World Eaters. If someone is using 260 points to bring a Land Raider into the list for World Eaters and it doesn't really get any benefits, hey, that's actually a win for me. So this is one of those parts where when it comes to the mono faction or experts and playing armies that are typically more limited, that to me is play into the strengths. That's what really needs to be done. Kyle, I really appreciated your comments as well on, hey, you fill out your list and you're starting with, well, what are going to be the parts that are doing your kind of auxiliary pieces, but you're bringing though, right? That's where you start. But then if I'm hearing you right, but then the focus is what are the things that do the most Tau? How do I bring the most lethal firepower? Considerations from the meta. So you're doing tweaking based on the meta, but you're not letting the meta dictate you. Did I get that part correctly?
Pretty much spot on. Yeah.
Cool.
The meta is
Cool.
informing me, not dictating what I'm doing. It's informing me what I need to bring.
Nice. All right, guys. At the end of every section here, every episode, we always have our wild card question, totally random. Although this one it does have some relevance here. Guys, does the Tau faction still deserve all the hate and the jokes and whatnot? Because of all the I don't know how the faction used to play in past editions. Sometimes I remember as like when I first started playing this game, they had like move, shoot, move, all that all that craziness, and they just seem to like break the game. Also, on a side note, do we like the Tau community as a whole? Some factions like orcs are generally a lot of fun. Orc players are a lot of fun. How do we feel about the Tau community? So first of all, does the Tau faction still deserve all that hate? Kyle, obviously you're a Tau player, but you can be honest. Do you guys think that you deserve a little bit of mud thrown your way?
I think it's gone its course now.
Yep.
The community needs to just shut up and stop crying over spilt milk from years ago. Do you see a shield drone in my list? Is it hovering behind a wall? No. Stop crying.
I forgot all about the shield. Oh man, I have nightmares about the shield drones. All right, man.
And I think, like, jokes aside, Tau were very difficult for them to balance, and there was obnoxious things, and drone city, and also, oh, by the way, I've got an entire army of indirect, and if you hide, you die. You come out in the open, you die. So it was not interactive and not fun. And there's a lot of that in 40k, and GW doing a great way of trying to get rid of some of that. So it's just an interactive game between two competitive players that just want to have, or two people that just want to have fun and play a game. So Tau have naturally in this edition, become balanced. So they're not really upsetting anybody, but also we're kind of like in the dirt a little bit because it's a complex army rule. It's a complex army to play. It's not a pickup army. And people are still throwing us hate. And it's like, stop kicking me. I'm already down. Why? Stop. Get over it already. Go to therapy. Stop. Like, deal with it in a healthy way. Stop trying to bully us. It doesn't make you feel better. Stop it. But hey, what are your takes? Come on, be honest. Going against Tau.
So, yeah, again, started Blood Angels were my first army in 40k. I started playing at the end of 7th edition. So when you first show up, literally my first game of 40k outside of my house was against Tau, 7th edition. Not much cover, everything else like that. I kind of joke with people, it's a miracle I even stayed in this hobby in the game, given the experience of like that with some of my first experience, and many of them against Tau or the combined Tau and Eldar. I will say, I think the last two editions, 9th and 10th edition, though, Kyle, I think Tau have been very balanced. They've been very good. But they have unique play styles. And actually, in 10th edition, right now in 10th edition, Tau are actually one of my favorite armies to play against. I think it's because right now it's like, yes, they are good, and they are largely shooting, or people think about them a lot as a shooting army. I would argue they're as much a movement army as they are anything else. And that's where they can be really frustrating to people because of how they can move, how they can bend the rules a little bit as it relates to that. And if you're not tight on your own movement, or if you're not understanding with how Tau move, that can get you caught out a little bit. But I also think it's kind of a cop-out where, oh, Tau can just do everything. No. Think of them as a movement army. Have that as your primary way to play against them. And I actually think Tau are very fun to play against at this point. There's other armies that are at the top of my list, Kicker, especially right now, as that I don't want to play against. But no, Tau,
Legions of Excess.
The community around Tau has been pretty interesting. As I'm going back into my Kroot ways, I've been kind of looking online, seeing the different, and the dialogue behind the Tau players has been generally pretty positive, which is nice. It's not as goofy as orcs or as thematic as sometimes the guard players can be. But anyway, very cool stuff. I wanted to ask
one last question as we're on this topic here, because this is the other thing. It's not specifically a Tau monofaction episode, but as we're talking about Tau are also described as a cow-fish alien race.
Yeah.
So, Kyle, beef or fish? What are you having for dinner? What are you preferring?
Surf or turf, man.
They're beef with a fascination to fish. Like, they have boobs, and they just name all their stuff after fish. So
there we go.
Like a bit of sushi, right? That's all they are. Come on. But interesting you said about the community, the Tau community, and I think this is a mirrored kind of behavior across all faction like experts or people that just love a faction, is that orcs, they just believe in it happens, right? So the orcs are all high energy, like, if we believe it, it works. Wow. Tau players are genuinely all about the greater good. So they're very approachable. They believe very strongly into the law of the greater good. We work together. So you'll find that a lot of Tau communities have come together because of, one, the lore, and 2, the bullying that they get from anyone that doesn't play Tau.
Yeah.
So, that's what you got. That's what you get. A community that got stronger because of the bullying.
Okay. I know I'm trying to watch the clock here. We can cut this out if we need to, but I really wanted to ask this question because we have Kyle here and he represents that community very much, but it's also a bigger question that might appeal to other audience members. Specifically with the recent release from Games Workshop, Tau got a big codex, obviously, or late last year, and they got all these beautiful Kroot models. I mean, an entire army of Kroot models. And then we got Vespid, but not a single new, I guess let's call it traditional Tau model. Now, is that a slap in the face of the Tau players, or is that more like lip service or, a hug to all the auxiliary fans, the Kroot fans? Because I myself was never wanted to play Tau, but as soon as the Kroot dropped, I'm like, yes, those are my people. So what does the hardcore Tau player think? And you can look at this at like some of the other factions, when they get a bunch of new models, but they don't really get stuff for their core. They get kind of these weird sub factions, especially with the rise of Kill Team, giving the opportunity to create all these weird kind of, secondary units. What do you think, Kyle? Were you, I was going to call him Tile. Sorry, Tile. So Kyle, seriously though, were you upset that you didn't get a single new blue-skinned mech robot thing?
I was a little bit like, oh, okay, cool, Kroot. I like Kroot. Don't like yourself. Rampage is cool, but I think for the diehard Tau fan, it was a bit disappointing. But it was obviously a thing that's like everybody hates Tau, but everybody loves Kroot. So let's make loads of Kroot models to bring the people that hate Tau over to Tau to play Kroot.
Guilty.
So yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, it's all good. The models are fantastic. And I think, obviously, the world's our oyster because GW have made some fantastic new creations. And I'm sure there's going to be new lines coming in later. But I just would rather prefer better quality of life within the models that we already have rather than just bringing out something new for the sake of it.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. All right. That was great. Thank you so much, Nick. You want to take us out, dude?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kyle, on behalf of our show here, thank you for accepting our epic challenge. And we talked about it at the beginning and referenced it a couple times, but if folks want to find you, aside from going to England specifically, where can they find you on the internet? Where can they get read about your program, your Discord, everything else like that? Where do they find you?
So YouTube, I've got all the links to join the Discord in there. It'll take you to a website that you can join from community tier, which is the free tier, and then obviously subscription tier, depending on your needs within the 40K universe, if you will. I'm doing a lot of work on my YouTube right now for the marketing and the campaigning and showing you my scheduling and things that I'm getting up to, just to give people more insight into what's going on behind the scenes rather than keeping it as the world's best secret. But at the end of the day I have a fantastic Tau Discord that's grown over 2 years. It's a phenomenal platform that's helped hundreds and thousands of people perform better with the faction. And if you want to be a part of it, you go onto my YouTube videos, click on the link and get involved. That's as simple as a way as possible. My calls are all done live and interactive with my audience, and I really get to the bare bones of what they're struggling with and how to overcome these obstacles. So passionate individual, love for Tau. If you want to perform at the highest levels, come and join me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man.
Kicker, what do we got next week?
Next week, surprise. But I think everyone that has ever watched a war film will appreciate it. I don't know. Is that enough of a teaser? Is that too much of a teaser? I don't know. If you like real battles, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Dude, I don't know what to say without dropping it. But it's gonna be a really good episode with a very known community member.
There we go.
Nick. Yeah. I wasn't set up for that one. Nick, take us out, dude.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching this week's episode of Epic Challenge. Try to say that 5 times fast, folks. Appreciate you checking in. Be sure to give us a follow. Again, we're on YouTube, Spotify, soon to be on Apple. Check out our social media accounts as well. Been updating those. And we look forward to talking with you next week. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Epic Challenge. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to like, share and subscribe. And be sure to check out Green Banner Event Co., the ones who help make this show possible. Tune in next week for another Epic Challenge.